WWE Clash of Champions is upon us this Sunday, and the State of Combat podcast on CBS Sports is here to get you caught up and fired up. I am Brian Campbell. With me from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, is the Silver King himself, Adam Silverstein. And Adam, listeners of the State of Combat podcast may be hearing this right now. A reminder for them to head on over to YouTube, watch our mugs, break this card down. This Sunday, I don't want to say this is an in-between card on paper, Adam. One thing this card does have big potential to do, though, if the booking gets creative, if we see multiple title changes, this pay-per-view in a sneaky sort of way could end up being the signal changer, the beginning of a new run as WWE makes some big moves in the next month or two. NXT going to mainstream TV, SmackDown moving live on Fox on Friday nights. You could see some big creative changes that begin on Sunday.
Yeah, that's the key. This may set the stage for the new era of WWE, if you want to call it that. Because let's not forget, one day after SmackDown debuts live on Fox, I should say 2 days, I'm sorry, is the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. So that ends up being the go-home show for Hell in a Cell. And if that's going to be the case, you kind of want those storylines starting right now, 1 month prior. And I think Clash of Champions, as you said, all 11 main roster titles are on the line. It gives WWE that opportunity for a reset. The card may not be absolutely loaded, but there's a lot of matches on it, in my opinion, that are top tier. Becky Lynch versus Sasha Banks, Seth Rollins versus Braun Strowman, the culmination, we hope, of the Kofi Kingston against Randy Orton storyline. Those are matches that you would have on a SummerSlam, potentially even a WrestleMania, and they are happening on Clash of Champions. The rest of the card may not be as strong, but there are some big names and big bouts on this show, BC. Are you excited to see those happen? Does it feel to you that maybe Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks is being rushed a little bit, or is Clash of Champions really what we should expect from a pay-per-view with this type of name and at this point in the calendar year?
That's what's interesting is I don't know. I'm a little underwhelmed on the build, but you just sort of nailed it right there. The match quality, the potential is huge on this. This has big-time pay-per-view expectations if some of that big booking happens, if some of the big changes happen. Look, let's not joke around. What we do here on the State of Combat sometimes is book the damn territory. We sit down and preview this card like we're about to do in a few seconds and sort of say, hey, what if this happens? What if they go in this direction? This could be big business. You could see a new change, a new direction. Let's hope this Sunday we do see that. But let's kick it off right there. You got any pre-show matches for me to tell you that I only need about 4 hot minutes of?
Well, no, because they haven't designated any pre-show matches because, as we said, there's 11 titles on the line, or maybe it's 10 and a regular match. I have to count. Silver King isn't great at math. But where we're going to start this show off is with the one non-title match on the show. And that's Roman Reigns against Eric Rowan in a feud, Brian, that it really looked like was going in the direction of Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan, which is the two biggest names on the SmackDown brand, something that us as WWE fans and viewers have wanted again for a really long time. But they're giving us Eric Rowan instead. So why don't you tell me, do you care at all about this match, which, by the way, was recently made a stipulation of no disqualification?
Yeah, I care a lot, and I can't believe I'm saying that this day, this week, this year, because this has been a bungled storyline. It had such big expectations. The whodunit, who was it? Roman Reigns is injured. Somebody's attacking him. Was it Buddy Murphy? They certainly activated our feel spot for a short season there, but just what seemed to be the end game is what had us sticking with it. The idea that Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan eventually will be in an all-star studded feud that would matter. I don't even know if we're going in that direction anymore, and the last 3-4 weeks certainly are inexcusable for some of the pitfalls of this storyline. So why do I suddenly care about it? Because there was enough intensity in what they did on Tuesday's episode of SmackDown that almost made me want to and be willing to forget what came before it. I never would have guessed I wanted or needed Eric Rowan to say a word. In fact, I probably on this podcast within the last few weeks told you, this guy's muscle, this guy's a monster. Only let him be that. Don't give him a spotlight. Don't give him an opportunity. Well, what happened Tuesday? I kind of like the thesis of what his promo was about, saying, I don't listen to anybody else. I have my own voice. And then when you have a brawl with Roman Reigns coming out trying to get retribution, it spills into the crowd. You get a crowd bump. You get a fan bump. Of course he's a little, he was put in there on purpose. It's probably some 5'3" local journeyman enhancement talent fellow, but he put on the Elias t-shirt and he was a fan, and that moment popped me. And when that brawl just kept escalating and escalating, I'll tell you what happened. Roman Reigns and Eric Rowan acted like it was a main event feud. And when you get performers that are doing that, you're going to take notice. They used the jib crane camera for a nice little spot there. Now suddenly, when Roman Reigns sat up at the end of that before they cut away, and you saw the look in his eyes, how many times have we seen this and we go, look, you failed. It's not for me. In that moment, Roman Reigns was speaking to me. He sort of woke up and realized maybe this guy's a tougher out than I thought. Now I want to see what they're doing with this storyline. Adam, if this is just a Roman Reigns Superman win comeback, it's going to fall flat. It's going to be like his win over Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania. It just didn't seem to make sense. Why are we doing this? But if they can go next level on what the larger picture is here and Rowan's role in this, we might have something.
I mean, that's what it feels like it's going to be to me. Just like the Drew McIntyre, just like every other in-between Roman Reigns feud. And was Rowan's promo good? Yeah, it was good. Was the brawl good? Yes. The fan plant spot, the powerbomb over the barricade, yeah, that was really cool. But you know what they haven't done? They haven't given us any reason for Eric Rowan to have attacked Roman Reigns in the first place. None. 0.0. So because of that, I really don't care about this match. I think it's going to be a banger. Yeah, no disqualification is great. Seeing those guys tussle, on the Titantron area was fun, and it's going to be hard hitting. But if you tell me to predict this, I predict Roman Reigns going over with a Superman punch and a spear, just like we always see before, because I don't really see them going in any other direction. Maybe there's a way.
I'll give you another direction. I'll book the damn territory right now. I'll get you fired. Why do we feel like we can do that on this show and then we never see it on the screen? What's Rowan a former member of? The Wyatt family. What made the most sense when he was muscle for a diabolical, just evil person in Bray Wyatt, who's back? And he's more evil than ever. And he doesn't have a match on Sunday. And he's teasing that he has bigger picture stuff coming up, Bray Wyatt, in terms of Universal Championship runs. How about we have Rowan surprise you and go over Roman Reigns with the help of a Luke Harper, remember that guy? Or just the help of Bray Wyatt, the Fiend himself? And a little bit of a spoiler alert, Adam. Am I asking for a lot here? Yes. But we are going to Fox with SmackDown. Things need to start happening storyline-wise. Guess what's also going on in that main event? Seth Rollins against former Wyatt family member Braun Strowman. I'm just saying, if this becomes a show that is taken over by Bray Wyatt and we kickstart a resurgence of the Wyatt family 2.0 and we have a dark, evil, diabolical crew, you know why I could have that optimism that something like this could happen? Because when Eric Rowan was backstage after attacking and beating Reigns down, started to act a little psychotic, started to just reference Roman's name over and over again, started to go in sort of a head trance. There's potential here to really make Bray Wyatt's new character matter. And if you reunite him with these muscle guys, look, they could have made Braun Strowman a world champion. They actually still can on Sunday. Doesn't seem like that's the direction they want to go. So put him back in the role in which he excelled violently and dominantly as a top heel. You feeling what I'm feeling? Because the BC's cooking right now. And if they're going to do what I just laid out, we're going to care. We're going to care big, Adam. I don't need a Roman Reigns Superman punch. Start this show with authority and get me fired up for what Bray Wyatt's trying to do.
It's good booking, but the whole promo was that he's not a follower anymore. He's a leader. He's his own man. So I don't really see him going back in something like that. And I just think they bungled the entire storyline. I don't think they really knew what they were doing when they started it. Daniel Bryan not being part of it, maybe it's a red herring. Maybe Daniel Bryan helps Eric Rowan get over Roman Reigns and he cuts a promo that we're equals. He doesn't follow me. And it was all just to screw with Roman Reigns' head. Maybe that's what they do here. But other than that...
Quick reminder, Adam. Guess who else is a former Wyatt family member? Daniel Bryan. So can we have fun here? Can we do this the right way, please, WWE?
Look, I'm all about stables. If they want to throw 4 or 5 guys in a group and call them a stable and have it be under Bray Wyatt's tutelage, then I'm fine with it. But I just think more than anything, WWE screwed this up, and I don't know that they have a way to save it other than just kind of making Eric Rowan a singles competitor and having Roman Reigns beat him like he always does, BC. If there's going to be a match on this card that is going to be a kickoff show match, I think it has to be the Cruiserweight Championship. You have Drew Gulak defending against Humberto Carrillo and Lince Dorado. I think it's going to be an exciting match, as all these 205 Live matches are, Brian. But do you really care?
I'm going to give you this. And when I do that, can you see that on the screen? You can't see that. I'm not talking about Tully and Arn, right? Not talking about Ole or Barry Windham, by the way, who was really the glue of the best foursome there of the Four Horsemen. No, give me 4 hot minutes and get out of here. Who's the other guy? Castillo, Carrillo? I'm sorry. I haven't been watching 205. I love it. I don't have 205 hours a week to watch all this stuff. Thank you. Was that a diva move right there? Might have been quasi diva right there.
Maybe just a little bit. I think Humberto Carrillo has a huge future in WWE. He has the look. He can speak. He is great in the ring. But ultimately, this is Drew Gulak retaining and moving on. I really don't see anything else that they're going to do with it. I don't know what's going to happen in 205 Live long-term, BC. I think we're going to find out when NXT moves Wednesday nights on USA Network for 2 hours live every week, beginning on Wednesday this upcoming week. Maybe they end 205 Live. Maybe they bring these guys into NXT. But Carrillo, as I said, I think he has a big future. I don't think he needs the Cruiserweight Championship right now. So with that, let's move on to another match that may well be on the kickoff show. We just don't know because WWE has not announced it yet. It's that United States Championship match. It was just booked Monday after Raw between AJ Styles and Cedric Alexander. Got the big win in the 10-man tag team match. For a feud that they really haven't built up, BC, are you excited to see what our boy with maybe the best theme song in WWE right now, Cedric Alexander, can do against the phenomenal AJ Styles?
You're damn right. I mean, in the dark, I feel at home, Adam, just like Cedric. And here's the thing, like the little that they've done with this feud, the chemistry, the potential has been fantastic. Yeah, they did a little WWE-ifying to the ending of that match in which they showed such strong in-ring chemistry for the couple minutes there with the club or the OC, whatever you're going to call them, the Good Brothers coming in and beating them down. And then, of course, we saw Cedric go over. I'm not against Cedric going over again. Why? Because it may be time to free up AJ Styles for another big picture main title run, for big business, for maybe a Brock Lesnar feud, something really upstairs, next level, a big thing as we go over onto Fox, which will trigger rumors, at least an upcoming draft where we're going to see the roster split up and AJ Styles is going to be a major player on either brand. If you really want to give him the rub, wow, give Cedric that rub by having him beat AJ and let these guys go 17, 18 minutes at minimum, because it's perfect. It's sort of like a new AJ Styles against an old one, and if you want to compare their working abilities. And when Cedric Alexander got that pin on Monday night before Steve Austin came out and sort of poured beer on his parade, if you will, did you notice how much he put into it as a babyface to make that pin feel important and feels like it matters? What that showed you is that Cedric Alexander does the little things very, very well alongside with being a top shelf worker. I mean, look, I thought Ricochet was going to kind of get this type of push and this type of rub, and he's close to it, and he's had a good run, but they could surprise me in a good way here by putting Cedric on top.
I completely agree. I think with the introduction of the Viking Raiders kind of teaming up with him and the baby faces Monday night on Raw, they set up a scenario where now the OC can be neutralized in this match. Normally, if you have a 3-man group going up against a singles competitor in a match like this, you always know how it's going to end. Really, the face is going to get really, really, really close to winning. Then the two other partners, usually the tag team, comes out, stops the ref from counting, something happens, there's an interference, and the guy ultimately retains the title. Well, having the Viking Raiders somewhat involved in this storyline, I think counteracts the Good Brothers and gives Cedric Alexander that one-on-one opportunity to actually beat AJ Styles. And as you said, AJ Styles right now is kind of holding the mid-card title and keeping it warm. The U.S. Championship is really the number 2 mid-card title in WWE. This guy is a main eventer. He should be competing with the Rollins and the Braun Strowman on SmackDown, the top names over there, the Daniel Bryan and the Roman Reigns, etc. So he did a good job in this role. The fact that the Good Brothers no longer have the Raw Tag Team titles kind of tells me AJ Styles doesn't need the United States Championship for them to continue being over as a group and a quasi-faction, if you want to call it that. So I agree with you, BC. I have Cedric Alexander taking the title here, and I think it's going to be one of the few really big surprises at Clash of Champions.
Let's see it. I hope for it. Let's get a few babyface pops here. Let's see some belts change hands. What do we got next?
We got the Intercontinental Championship match with Shinsuke Nakamura defending his title against The Miz. And I feel the exact opposite about this match as I do about the one we just discussed. I do not care one iota about this. I think the addition of Sami Zayn with Shinsuke Nakamura has been a complete bungle, basically telling the audience, hey, this guy, he's Japanese, he doesn't speak the language very well, so we feel the need to inject Sami Zayn into it. And then on the other side, they have The Miz basically beating everyone, Andrade, Cesaro, like he's suddenly this incredible wrestler as he prepares to go up against Shinsuke Nakamura. And we don't see Nakamura really wrestling at all, BC. So are you more excited about this match for me, and who do you think ultimately wins?
No, I'm not really excited about this at all. You nailed how bad the build has been, but there's two reasons why I think it's smart to actually go with the title changing hands here with The Miz. You heard them mention what you see on the graphic now on Tuesday night's episode of SmackDown. The Miz can win his 9th IC title, which would tie him for the record. Notice who they did not mention owns the record right now. One Chris Jericho, who's working for the competitor across the street at AEW, and really by the day is sort of distancing himself from being a WWE company guy and is certainly all in, if you will, on being a competitor. Kind of makes sense to get Miz, a guy who's really established himself as a Hall of Fame lifer, a company man, a guy who's been through the wars and back, establish him with tying that record and eventually taking it. But a little bit more importantly, when you're going to SmackDown live on Fox on Friday nights and you're getting in people's living rooms who haven't watched wrestling in years or maybe never at all, not a bad idea to put your best talkers front and center in key roles. Having Miz potentially as the IC champion there and slowly, subtly transitioning back into a full-on heel role might be the best use of him, might be the best business you can have. He could legitimately be a core face should he end up on the blue brand as they go live in primetime on Friday night with sort of the NFL lead in there in terms of marketing each week to get people to notice that brand. I could see this easily happening.
Well, let's not forget that Miz, right now at least, is a Raw guy. This is a SmackDown title. He also has the Miz and Mrs. show on USA Network, so I have a feeling he's going to stay with that red brand for quite a while. For me, this is an opportunity to actually put Shinsuke Nakamura over in a match that matters a little bit, even though I don't really like it, don't care for it much. I think Nakamura retains because he does have Sami Zayn's help. Miz doesn't really have anyone, and really once they have Nakamura retained, they can set up a legitimate feud as we move into Hell in a Cell, which is basically the debut of SmackDown on Fox. Maybe it's Finn Balor trying to get back, and get his title back from Nakamura and coming back refreshed from whether it was an engagement or a wedding. We're not exactly sure, but Balor did take some time off. So that's kind of the direction I think we're going to go. I feel like Miz is just a placeholder and a decent one for a card like this. It's just they didn't really do a good job building this feud or storyline, BC. So next we're going to move on to the Women's Tag Team Championship. And if I'm being honest, it is a delight to see this actually defended on one of these mid-pay-per-views. WWE really seems to forget about it from time to time. The reason they're not forgetting about it now, though, is because Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross are the Women's Tag Team Champions, and they're going to defend against Fire and Desire, Mandy Rose, and Sonya Deville. Do you see a title change happening here, BC, or is this really just the beginning of the Bliss Cross era as the Women's Tag Team Champs?
I think it should be the beginning, unless they had giant plans to separate Bliss and go back in a singles run, and it's a real crowded area there at the top of the pool with the 4 horsewomen of NXT now, all those giant names. This is a great team to represent the brand. Bliss, such a great talker, such a great representative, Cross the crazy worker, that I think they defend and move on. And I don't think there's really been enough of a storyline for me to really care about if they do or not, to be really honest. But they are great representatives if you want to push this title more to the forefront and give it a little bit more shine. They're certainly better than the Iconics, who certainly played a comedic role in winning it at WrestleMania and representing it. But if you want to have this be a little bit more serious, this is the right team for it.
Well, you're right, because for as tired of as people are of Bliss continually being champion, whether a Raw champion, SmackDown champion, or now Women's Tag Team Champion, the one thing is Vince likes her, and it gets the titles on TV, and this is something that we really had not seen with the Women's Tag Team Championships for a long time. So they're actually working very well together as a team, and besides the Iconics, the only other real team right now is Fire and Desire, so it's nice to see them getting this opportunity while the Kabuki Warriors just kind of don't exist anymore, or who knows, we just haven't seen them really since they had that one opportunity.
Yeah, and the Kabukis could end up, because they're such great workers there, Asuka and Kairi Sane, could end up being really good foils for Cross and Bliss, who are kind of tweenish, but certainly can do heel a lot better. And I said there hasn't been a great build. I mean, there's been Mandy Rose making fun of Nikki Cross for not being beautiful. Like what is this? Is some lowest common denominator crap. Give me 4 hot minutes, get out of here.
It was really poor. The promo was not very good, BC. And I agree. I go, you have to have the retention here. And maybe they are building the Kabuki Warriors winning the titles at Survivor Series or Hell in a Cell or something like that. Because really, you do want this on a team that can work. And they can certainly work far better than Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Again, not that they're doing a bad job. But staying with the tag team division, we're going to move over to SmackDown Tag Team Championships, where the New Day, Brian, did you even realize they were the champions, are defending against the Revival? What do you think about this match? Do you want to talk about zero build? They've been concentrating on Randy Orton, basically against Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship. These guys have just also been involved. New Day's barely been on TV recently. What do you think about this match?
I haven't thought about it at all. When I looked at the rundown of matches here before we recorded this, I legitimately did exactly what you said. I said, oh, the New Day are champions right now. I had no idea. I don't think you can go back to the Revival so quick. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Keep it on the New Day. Again, back to my theory of having your best talkers front and center when you make a much larger public launch. The New Day is as great as anyone in that role. You know, it'll surprise us. It'll be certainly a much better match than we expect. My only real hope here, Adam, is we know how great the Revival are as workers. I mean, they are Tully and Arn 2.0, and I coming from me, that's with the greatest ounce of respect and even making that comparison. Revisit their collaborations in NXT against the likes of American Alpha or DIY. We know they can work insanely well, and if given an opportunity, can roll out the balls here and have a 4.5-star match, probably with ease. And we know the New Day can work. Sometimes these matches don't end up being that on pay-per-views, and for whatever this has lacked as a build, this could be the perfect opener if they went in that direction where you just say, you know what, go out there and win the crowd over. You're not going to get 30 minutes. It's not going to be a classic. But live it up. Do what you do best. I feel like the Revival haven't even been given that chance to show on the main roster exactly as workers what they could even be.
Yeah, give it 15, 18 minutes. You're right. Have it open the show and really get the crowd going, because this is a sneaky potential best match on the card if it's given the right time. Just talking about from a work rate standpoint, from an in-ring excitement standpoint, the New Day have put on some great matches on TV and pay-per-views recently, and the Revival have as well. So I'm down to see this, but ultimately, BC, you're right. There's no reason to change the titles here. New Day is, again, a SmackDown team. You have the Revival, which are a Raw team. The crossing of streams here just doesn't really make sense until you get to an eventual superstar shakeup or WWE draft, which is apparently coming in October, as we mentioned earlier in the audio portion of our show. So for me, keep the titles on New Day, and maybe keep the titles on Kofi Kingston, BC, and we might as well move on to the WWE Championship, considering this is all involved in one storyline. Obviously, Kofi and New Day, Xavier Woods and Biggie all being New Day, and then Randy Orton recently getting a lot of help from the Revival. So WWE Championship. We are doing this rematch, Kofi Kingston against Randy Orton. We kind of got a schmaz finish at SummerSlam that massively disappointed, I should say, both of us. Do you see them going in a direction of Kofi retaining? Do you think this is the time that Randy Orton finally wins his next WWE Championship and starts climbing that ladder that has John Cena and then obviously Ric Flair in terms of all-time world champions at the very top?
And has Charlotte Flair on the way right behind him as well, along with Triple H. But I'm going to do what we do every time Kofi Kingston has a title defense since winning the title at WrestleMania in such dramatic fashion, which is I'll lay out why he should lose it, and then he'll retain it. And then he'll go on to prove me wrong for saying he should have lost it. Now, this build hasn't been great. There's certainly been some great moments separated at times, though, in this build. Right now, why I think it should happen, though, is because it's Randy Orton, and he's really exuding the star factor, and they've told their backstory fairly well. And Kofi was able to go over on the go-home moment on Tuesday night on SmackDown so dominantly in rehashing their original big moment at Madison Square Garden almost a decade earlier. He's the one who stood tall. It would seem like that would be the tip to show you that he's going to lose the belt on Sunday, and that, if the Revival, like we just predicted, comes up empty earlier in the night against the New Day, would kind of make sense why they would want to come out and help Randy again in this FTRKO faction that they've sort of softly built together. I really could lay out even more why it should be Randy Orton right here. But it's probably going to end up being Kofi retaining, and it's probably going to be that original prediction we had from way back when, that on that opening night of SmackDown on Fox, on that Friday night, October 4th, you'll probably see a major moment, something like Brock Lesnar coming back and winning the world championship there from Kofi Kingston. So I'm going to pick Randy Orton, but I'm telling you ahead of time I'm going to be wrong.
Yeah, the only thing that takes me away from that prediction with Lesnar that I had, a couple months ago, is that it is the go-home show to Hell in a Cell, which is a major pay-per-view. So maybe they're not going to do something like that, especially now that they are promoting it as the 20th anniversary of SmackDown, BC. What I thought should have happened this entire time is Randy Orton winning the title at SummerSlam and Kofi Kingston getting the rematch at Hell in a Cell and winning it back. Why? Because Kofi Kingston as WWE champion is great, but Kofi Kingston chasing the WWE championship is even better. So I'm not sure why they gave us that finish at SummerSlam, but I'm going to double down on it. It's time for him to lose the title, not because he's not a great champion, but because from a storyline standpoint, it's better for him to chase. So I think Kofi Kingston does lose the title here. I think Randy Orton is the new WWE champion, and I think they have a rematch at Hell in a Cell where Kingston wins it back 1 month later. Are you okay with that booking?
Yeah.
Inside Hell in a Cell. Inside Hell in a Cell.
I'll Silver King you with a meh. I don't know. I mean, they had the big pop with Kofi winning at WrestleMania, and it was great for a million different reasons. And I had thought maybe they'd flip the belts quick and have him get a second one at SummerSlam, and they didn't go in that direction. He's been champion wire to wire. I don't know what that would do now. I think the window might be closed. Not closed on him being a popular superstar as he's always been and a valuable member of the New Day. But once he loses that title, I think it's over and maybe should be over. There are much, much, much bigger stars in WWE than Kofi Kingston. And with the business direction that we're headed right here, I think it's time.
Fair enough. So let's move over and do this exact same thing on the Raw side, because we have the Raw Tag Team Championships and the Universal Championship both in one storyline again. I'm kind of just realizing now that WWE's done this on both brands. But you have Seth Rollins, who's the Universal Champion, teaming with Braun Strowman as the Raw Tag Team Champions, BC, going up against the newly formed team of Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler. So this match kind of came out of nowhere. Roode and Ziggler getting the number one contendership kind of out of nowhere. Do you think they use this as an opportunity to change the titles, kind of like they used to do back in the Attitude Era, where all of a sudden randomly like Mankind and The Rock would team up and they'd face like Triple H and another top heel? Do you see a title change here? Is this a coronation for Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler?
Yeah, 100% it is. It's fairly telegraphed, too, and that's not a bad thing in this case. I don't love me some Robert Roode. He peaked for me in NXT, and they've never done anything that I've loved since then. But this would give him a rebirth opposite such a star and a worker in Ziggler. And really, at this point, if they got nothing for Ziggler, having him a tag team champion in this spot wouldn't be that bad at all either. You're going to have to free up both Strowman and Rollins. It's obvious through all the teases that what's going to cost them the championships in the end is each other. And let's not forget the little tease you had on Raw with Ziggler and Roode backstage talking to AJ in the club, sort of getting buddy-buddy. Could they get them involved in sort of trying to screw over Seth Rollins in the end because AJ Styles wants in on that Universal Championship feud and opportunity in the long run? Definitely could see that. I think the only thing guaranteed on this show is that Braun and Rollins, sort of an all-star tag team championship team, do not retain. The only question, of course, is then what happens in the main event, which we'll get to.
Yeah, well, this is the typical booking, in my opinion, and you kind of saw a tease of it on Raw when Rollins got pushed into Strowman, and then whoever pushed him in ran out of the ring, and Strowman thought Rollins turned on him and broke up the pin on purpose. But it's the scenario where something happens, maybe it's AJ Styles, does something, Braun blames Rollins, gives him the running power slam, Roode covers him or Ziggler covers him, they win the titles, and they brawl, and then they have to get separated for their match later in the night, giving Strowman the opportunity to turn quasi-heel and for them to lose the titles without Rollins getting beat straight up by Ziggler or straight up by Roode. So I do think that's the typical booking. Now, WWE could completely swerve us and say, no, we're going to keep the title on Rollins and Strowman, and maybe have Strowman win the Universal Championship, or maybe have Rollins retain it, and that's the direction that we're going to keep going. They could do that. But in my opinion, there are too many superstars on WWE's main roster, Raw and SmackDown, for them to have one guy hold two titles. I know technically it's kind of also happening with the New Day because Kofi's part of it and he's in theory a tag team champion as well. But you can't have that happening on both brands where you have so many superstars waiting for opportunities at singles titles and tag team titles. You just can't have the same person involved in all of these feuds. So for me, yeah, we do have Strowman and Rollins lose the titles to Roode and Ziggler, BC. And that brings us into the Universal Championship match, where now we have Rollins defending his title one-on-one against Braun Strowman as right now a pair of baby faces. Do you think we see a title change, or is maybe Seth Rollins' reign, which kind of came to an abrupt end against Brock Lesnar, cashing in that Money in the Bank briefcase a few months ago, is it really just at the beginning of its second run?
Well, I want to stop before I answer that and ask you this.
Bring it.
Does this match close the show? Should it close the show? I say yes to both.
I say no, and if you can tell, I built the rundown for this show, and I don't have it last on the ones we're discussing. I do have the 2 women's matches last. Ultimately, I think your best feud going into Clash of Champions is Becky Lynch against Sasha Banks. It's the match everyone wants to see. It's the match that everyone cares about because Sasha Banks was gone for so long, came back with a great heel persona, really the legit boss that she used to be back in NXT. So I think they do close the show with Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks, or BC, that's just me wishing, as I like to do, and they just go back to the old standby of Rollins and Strowman.
All right, I'll tell you what's going to happen now, and I'm going to be optimistic, BC. You heard me at the open. I got Bray Wyatt involved in this whole show. This match closes the damn show. I'm not sure, though, that Braun Strowman wins. There's a couple different ways you can do it. Look, Seth Rollins, they've committed a ton to building him up right now in this Universal Championship. He beat Brock Lesnar clean to open WrestleMania. Oh, cleanish with a kick to the crotch. Well, what did he do at SummerSlam? He beat Brock Lesnar clean to defend that championship or even to win it back. Or no, that was for the cash in there. In the end, he is so primed and ready to be their number one, at least on the Raw brand as they head into where they're going here with the splitting of the brands on separate networks, that it wouldn't seem logical that Strowman goes over. What I don't want or need, though, is Rollins to beat Braun Strowman clean. I just don't see it right now in the storylines and believability. Without some help, I don't know. I kind of want to see that storyline come together with Bray Wyatt. I don't know if he's going to calm down, the lights are going to go out, and he's going to show up, and he's just going to wink at Braun, or he's going to do something to mesmerize him or seduce him. But I'd like to see a return to evil Braun Strowman. I don't think he needs to win the Universal Championship and have that in the evil Bray Wyatt stable, because I think ultimately, if you're going to do this Bray Wyatt push right, you're going to have Bray Wyatt in a match against Seth Rollins for that big championship. But I think you're going to have Seth Rollins retain in some sort of crazy form here or have an outright smudged finish. But let's bring back Bray Wyatt with muscle, and Braun Strowman is that.
Yeah, I do agree with you. They kind of showed their hand here by playing into the internet speculation. The venue, I don't know what venue it is, but whatever's hosting Hell in a Cell basically said that Bray Wyatt would be in a Universal Championship match, which is strange because he's been nowhere near the title picture. And WWE's kind of doubled down on that with 2 promos in the last 2 weeks on Raw of Wyatt basically telling Rollins and or Strowman, I'll see you in hell, referring to Hell in a Cell. So they kind of painted themselves into a corner here also with Rollins because, look, it's tough to believe that Rollins is going to beat Lesnar clean. But okay, they got away with it at SummerSlam, and they booked it in a way where Rollins went over insanely strong. But then the next competitor they give him is the other massive dude on the roster in Braun Strowman, and you're basically saying that if Rollins beats Strowman clean, he's untouchable, because if those guys can't beat him, no one can except maybe Roman Reigns, who's not even on their brand, right? So they've painted Seth into this weird corner if they do give us a clean finish. For all those reasons, I don't see them giving us a clean finish. And yeah, Brian, maybe you're right. Maybe it's as simple as the lights go down, Fiend pops out in the middle of the ring, surprises one or both of them, distracts Strowman enough so that Rollins can hit him from behind, stomp him, and get the 1, 2, 3. Or maybe it is a DQ where he hits the mandible claw on Strowman and takes Strowman down, leading into the Rollins Fiend, or maybe even a triple threat match at Hell in a Cell. Ultimately, I don't think we get a clean winner here, though.
It's probably more likely that the lights come back on, he's got the mandible claw on Rollins, and then Strowman's in that position of, what do? Do I attack him or do I help him? And then you see a very vicious beatdown on Seth Rollins, and you see the pay-per-view go off the air with that Fiend mask smiling and laughing, which really is the perfect bridge to having him main event Hell in a Cell just a couple months later. Crazier things. I mean, this Bray Wyatt character is so over and so brilliantly handled right now as the Fiend and what he's doing in that Firefly Funhouse that you want to play his segment every week on Fox, maybe at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time at the end of SmackDown. He could be a monster player there as well if they go in that direction.
Do you feel it's too early for them to be putting the Fiend into a title picture of any kind?
No, he's so look. This is what we wanted. This is what we have yearned for, which is Bray Wyatt to be taken seriously. No, not a House of Hardcores match against Randy Orton. And you could say, well, dude, he was taken seriously. He was in not the WrestleMania main event, but a WrestleMania main event in Orlando just a couple years back for the championship. That story, though, just went downhill so quickly. And from there, it was just typical. What is Bray Wyatt? Where is he going? All he ever does is lose. We wanted something like this. You have to capitalize on this. Do not use Bray Wyatt as an attraction. Do not use him as an Undertaker. Do not use him as a Elias who just shows up every week but doesn't really do anything. He's only going to matter if he's destroying people. And that storyline's only really, really going to work if he has help and he has these henchmen and he can manipulate them like he used to. Only right now his character is as strong and detailed and developed as it ever has been. Him in a title feud or eventually with it is that menacing villain at the end of the video game, the boss, who you prop up a Seth Rollins to eventually beat at a WrestleMania. That's storytelling. That's marketing. That's how you do it in a Vince McMahon run pro wrestling territory.
Okay, you're getting me to buy in because I was coming from the other direction of it. It's maybe a little bit too early. Potentially save that to the Royal Rumble as the lead-in to WrestleMania or something. But BC, you got me to turn around on that one. So now that that's all out of the bag here, we have 2 matches left. They may not be the main events of Clash of Champions, but they work together just like the other matches have that we just discussed. First, the SmackDown Women's Championship. We have Bayley, who just recently seemed to turn heel, again defending her title against Charlotte Flair, who just recently seemed to turn face, or somewhere in between, a little bit of a tweener there. BC, do you think Charlotte Flair goes and wins her 10th WWE Women's Championship at this pay-per-view in her hometown of Charlotte, or is this another case of WWE building something up and only having the hometown kid lose in their hometown?
I think it's the latter. My knee-jerk reaction was, as I always do, oh, Charlotte's in a title bout. She's going to win it. Why? We always talk about it. She's going to be the one, I think, that eventually breaks Cena and her father, Ric Flair's tie of 16 world championships, even though that's not even real. Rick has had somewhere of 22 or 23. Who's counting at this point? Right. This time, though, I don't think so. And here's why. You said these matches are connected. They are. How good would it be for WWE on this relaunch of Sasha Banks and this convincing her old friend Bayley to sort of cross over into a quasi-heel turn? And by the way, WWE moving forward from now can't be quasi. It's got to be white and black. They got to be heels. How valuable and important would it be if Sasha Banks and Bayley came out of this pay-per-view both holding the 2 biggest women's champions in the company, both appearing every week on Raw and SmackDown together, and both sort of just being this badass heel duo that really raises Bayley's stock? And then eventually you can finally tell the story that we've wanted forever, which is their own version of the Mega Powers Explode. How many times has Bayley and Sasha's friendship stopped and started and never really happened, and they went to therapy and all this stuff that's never really been handled or written properly? How good would it be if they are both world champions at the same time, and the potential of what you can do there and the jealousy that may play into that? So I think if Sasha's going to end up winning it in the second match that could potentially close the show that you mentioned there against Becky Lynch, I think that would counteract and coexist here with Bayley doing the same. And I think maybe overly forcing their hand with Charlotte in her hometown is probably the perfect facade to set you up for that, where you assume Charlotte's going to go over, but it is Bayley in the end, and maybe it's Sasha helping out.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. This is a situation where Charlotte Flair has been so built up, she's so strong, she can lose really any match to anyone at any time as long as it looks convincing. Whether it's a roll-up, whether, I don't know, she hits her head on something, gets fake concussed, and Bayley pins her. Whatever the case, I think you have Bayley win this match and be a heel champion duo with Sasha Banks, because if you do that, you can extend this rivalry through Hell in a Cell, through Survivor Series, and all the way maybe even to the Royal Rumble, BC, because you can have a tag team match with all 4 of these women on a pay-per-view. You can have the 2 champions, maybe a face wins it back, going head-to-head at Survivor Series without a title actually being on the line, and then you only have 1 more pay-per-view to book until you get to the Royal Rumble. So for me, absolutely, you have to have Bayley retain here more than anything else, because how many times in WWE, BC, have we seen Bayley get a push only for her just to lose very soon afterwards and get buried. And yes, the word buried is overused, but with Bayley, you're always skating on such thin ice with her because she's not Becky, she's not Sasha Banks, and she's not Charlotte Flair. So anytime you do something that does take her down a notch, it takes her down even lower than those women. So for me, you have to have Bayley retain the title here and do exactly what you said. Go into this final match, which we can transition right into, the Raw Women's Championship, where you have Becky Lynch defending against Sasha Banks, and you have Sasha Banks win the title and go toe-to-toe with Bayley as, hey, at WrestleMania, we walked in as women's tag team champions. Now we're standing as the two singles women's champions on both brands, which also, BC, counteracts some of those dirt sheet rumors about Sasha Banks being pretty damn unhappy with WWE.
No, absolutely. This is going to be interesting how this match is presented. Sasha Banks against Becky Lynch. I mean, it's so perfect. Banks finally coming back after not using her, and then her not using her at all. We don't know where she's going, and she comes back and she's as badass as ever. And certainly Becky Lynch still living off of how great that turn was into the man. So I already booked the territory in a very Vince McMahon old school type way, right? You have a smudge finish in the main event, and you have Bray Wyatt come out and you start a new faction. That's Vince McMahon style. You saying this could and maybe should go on last is very progressive, Triple H almost level booking. And of course, the 4 horsewomen did come from NXT and from him to begin with. If they go in this direction, Adam, I would be nothing but joyful. Here's why. We've seen classics among these 4 horsewomen. Their Fatal 4-Way originally in NXT was the match that sort of won me over at the potential of what women's wrestling could be in the modern era. I also loved a lot of the spin-offs that we saw. You know, some people think the Sasha and Bayley work in NXT and those 2 very big matches was the one that really raised the bar. A lot of people can point to Sasha and Charlotte in that main roster feud they had in 2016, really being one of the greatest rivalries, male or female, of the modern era. What we haven't had is a cross connection here between Becky and Sasha at this level and this opportunity. So what does this mean? This means if you put them on last and you give them 25 minutes and you say, have a wrestling match, have an old school wrestling match, old school like the men used to do back in Charlotte for Jim Crockett Promotions and Ric Flair back in the day, or even old school like the women did in NXT, which really started this women's revolution. Let Sasha and Becky work, and you better have Sasha come out on top with the belt. I think this will be a misstep and a monster failure if anything happens, but Sasha Banks, the heel, who's polished up and ready to fulfill that true destiny that she had on the main roster that for many reasons never happened. Let me remind you, 3-4 years ago, people compared her to The Rock. I know that sounds crazy. They said if there's one female in this new era who could be a crossover star like The Rock level, and that just sounds crazy even saying it right now, it is Sasha Banks because of that flair and that swag. She's back. You want to put her on SmackDown? You want eventually, or Raw as we launch into this third boom period and where business can be back and wrestling can be back front and center. Sasha Banks is the one you need with the title. But let these 2 work, Adam. Let them produce the classic that they really never have. They told a great story in NXT. They had a NXT takeover match when Sasha was NXT champion that I loved the build-up. They used to be friends. They broke apart, but they never were allowed to have the classic together. This could be it, and I would pop for it massive.
Let's not forget, BC, you had Sasha Banks making the headlines while she wasn't with the company. Then you had her make a big return that made more headlines. And you have Becky Lynch, who's the most over superstar in the company right now, that WWE is putting front and center at Fox upfronts and major events and having her do ESPN SportsCenter commercials and things like that, right? So how would this match not go on last? Like, I'm being a little, critical here of WWE. They always tend to go with the WWE Championship, or really, honestly, these days, the Universal Championship. But if you're talking about what is the biggest storyline in the company right now, what is the match people are anticipating more than anything else, it's Becky Lynch against Sasha Banks, and being able to give us a title change with Sasha Banks, who really, Brian, if you look at who Becky has fought since she won both titles at WrestleMania, since she was winner take all, she's fought really Lacey Evans and Natalya, and neither of those was someone that you legitimately thought should have been the one to beat Becky. You need to be a huge name in order to take down the equivalent of an Austin or a Rock or a Triple H. And that's what Sasha Banks is. She's been the missing piece. Heel Sasha Banks, the boss Sasha Banks, has been the missing piece in WWE's women's division for quite some time. So there is no other answer to me on how to end the pay-per-view or how to finish this match than having Sasha Banks go over as the new Raw Women's Champion.
And look, Becky is, for a reason, gave us Steve Austin feel of a badass Steve Austin when booked right. But that only really works on the chase. Let's be honest. Since becoming champion, the booking hasn't been the best. Since getting engaged to Seth Rollins and they played up that side of the angle, the booking hasn't been the best. Her with a chip on her shoulder, feeling like she was wrong, needing to be on the come up, is her as female Austin. And if Sasha Banks is allowed to keep being the badass boss, she's the Rock, essentially, in that regard, in that relationship, how that can work. This could really be the start of a new era, all that great stuff, but really the fulfillment of what these women did in NXT. And in some cases, we've seen it work out great, but we haven't seen the four of them really maximize themselves. It's interesting. We saw their reunion on Raw and their tag team match, which had some really good moments. And now we're going to see these two matches in very prominent spots here and a chance to really move this women's revolution, or whatever you want to call it, even further to that next level, because they can work. That was a big part of taking women seriously. But you now have the star level to really back it up. I mean, look where Becky is just in the last 9 months. Look where Sasha is now and could be. Charlotte's already established herself. Bayley, you're the Ringo Starr of that group, but that's not shade. There's no shade at Bayley for that. It is what it is. Somebody's got to keep the beat. Bayley can do that. She can hug too.
Hey, Ringo had a lot of success as a single. You know, once he left the Beatles, once they split up, Ringo sold some records. So, you know, peace and love on that right there. But BC, now we've talked through this card. We've gone through all of the matches. We started off kind of saying we're excited, but it's a mid-level pay-per-view. Yeah, but there's some good bouts on the show. Now that we've finished talking it through, are you a little bit more excited than you were about an hour ago when we started talking about Clash of Champions?
I'm very excited at the potential, yes. And certainly I maybe didn't give the Banks-Becky match the potential to go. I didn't even think about it going on last. That's how under the radar I thought this pay-per-view was. They got a chance to do something special on Sunday night in Charlotte. Hopefully WWE does. It's a fertile time. Pro wrestling is back, and it's going to be back in your face even more with NXT going to cable television, with SmackDown going to primetime network television. So a lot of big business to come. Let's hope this card delivers. I will tell you, though, the State of Combat podcast on CBS Sports always delivers separate episodes each week in the sports of boxing, mixed martial arts, and this one on pro wrestling. We hope you enjoyed our Clash of Champions preview for the Silver King. It's your boy BC. We out.